Welcome to the second part today. Thanks to everyone who supports me. It's very important to me. I won't keep you. Let's get started. First story in the second part. From the user Throwerlast Coyote, let's listen. My wife and I have known each other for 10 years and got married in 2018. We have very different lifestyles. She's a very devout Mormon, and I am not religious. We found some way to make it work. It was a hard road, but there are some challenges still. But we love each other very much. She has never met my biological mother. My parents were divorced long before I met her, and I broke contact with my mom after I turned 18. My mom was extremely abusive towards me growing up. She physically abused me and my sister regularly and tried to frame it on my father. She was able to manipulate a doctor to give me multiple medications growing up, and she'd steal the meds. Her dirt boyfriend also tried to be abusive to me too. I cut my losses and cut all contact with my mother and her family. So did my sister. My parents, dad and stepmom, didn't approve of my wife at first because of her religion, but they get along now. When my wife asked me when she'd meet my mom, I told her she never would. She's a violent and terrible woman, and she has no place in my life, and I didn't want her involved in ours. I also told her not to contact anyone in my mom's family. Recently, my mom showed up at my work, which she had no knowledge of. It got ugly, and police had to be called to remove her from the property. It was such an embarrassment. When I got home, I told my wife, and she just had her "oh dump" look on her face. I asked what that was about. She confessed she reached out to my mom and told her where I worked, because my mom wanted to make amends. My wife's beliefs are that everyone deserves forgiveness, and doesn't believe something could be unforgivable. I told her that violated the one thing I told her was out of bounds, and didn't even tell me until dump hit the fan. She, of course, has been apologetic. I told her we'd get there, but I needed to get through it. I've been sleeping in the office at home, and we've barely spoken since. We are supposed to travel to her parents for Thanksgiving, but I'm really considering staying home with the dogs so I can sort myself out. I'm not sure how to get over this. Author update this story. Get this out of the way. Mom was served with a restraining order. She can't go on my work property, and I suffered no issues at work because of what happened. Leading up to Thanksgiving, my wife and I sat down to talk. I said I wasn't going to go to her parents for the holiday, and I think it would be best if we had some time apart. She was upset and scared because she has bad anxiety when she travels far alone. So her sister agreed to travel with her. But in this conversation, I asked to see the messages between her and my mom. My mom had bothered her for months with messages on Facebook asking how I was doing, if I was alive, and saying she doesn't get to hear from her son. That part is what got my wife to reply with an update on everything. She mentioned what I did at my work and named the place, which there's only one location in our city. I knew she had been reached out to, as me, my sister, and her husband all had, but I didn't know she was constantly harassing my wife like that. Which, in the time between my mom showing up and this conversation, my mom sent several messages accusing her of setting her up, keeping her son from her, and those very pleasant messages. She went to her parents' place. I made burgers and hung out with the dogs on Thanksgiving. I went over to my dad's that Friday, while everyone there was out doing Black Friday things. We hung up the Christmas lights and I told him what happened. Oddly, my dad didn't have much to say. He asked what I was going to do. I asked him for a specific file he had, and I told him I'd show her the file. Wife comes home after almost a week, and the day after, I sit her down and we have a conversation and I pull out the file. She clearly didn't intend what happened, but she asked if I was divorcing her. I said no, but she needed to have told me what happened or blocked her. If she had insisted on messaging my mom, I should have been involved to make a more generic message. At this point, I opened the file, put it in front of her, and she went completely pale. In the file were the pictures of me the night my mom gave up custody. What happened was, we got into a fight over my grades in junior high. My mom started hitting me repeatedly, to the point where her nails had started to cut my face. At this point, I was big enough to stop her. I caught her wrist and I twisted it enough to where she stopped and ran out of the house. The police were called because my mom said I broke her wrist. I didn't. My dad picked me up, took the photos of my bruised and cut face, and my mom released custody to him. A few of these cuts left scars that are still visible on my cheek and sideburn area. After explaining what she was seeing, and she looked through what was in there, I told her she needed to understand she opened the door for my mom to have done this to me again, to my mom potentially doing that to her. And if we had any kids, they'd be at risk for the same abuse. Because my mom hasn't changed, her messages were the master manipulator going after my innocent wife. She said she didn't know it was this bad, and she didn't mean that to have happened. I said we needed to go to therapy as a non-negotiable, and she agreed. I caught some heat from her parents for showing her the file. Her parents had me promise them I'd protect her and not ruin her innocent view of the world, I guess is the way to word it. She had a very slow grasp of real-world things that weren't very present in the church upbringing. Although, they actually agreed she shouldn't have responded to my mom, which was surprising. I did some solo therapy before we did our couples therapy. She was a little upset because I was distant during the holidays, like I wasn't there. Apparently, I had some kind of repressed or undiagnosed PTSD, and I began dissociating again after that happened, and that was why I didn't seem like I was present. I feel like we are making progress. The therapist said my wife had this subconscious desire to fix things and make her perfect family because of some issues her parents had and some issues on both sides of her family. So that was likely why she responded without checking with me. We have stopped trying for a baby for now, which she's devastated about presently because one of my stepsisters announced she's pregnant and it really kind of hurt her because she really wants to be a mom. We are spending time together again and sleeping in the same bed. She's tried really hard to make it up to me, and she's been trying to read more about abuse and understanding those things, which is hard for her. We tried to get things back to normal throughout Christmas and New Year's. Presently, we are doing our therapy every 2 weeks, and I see my therapist the weeks in between. Thinking back, showing her the file with those pictures may have been a step too far. Our therapist said it was probably a lot for her to take in. But I said it in our session, and I said it the night of. She needed to completely understand what door she opened and what repercussions could have come from what she did and what could happen to our theoretical children if she opens that door again. I'm not sure if there was an alternative to showing her that file, but I think she understands what I really went through. Now, my wife will sometimes rub the scar lines on my face and just give me this strange look. She never questioned those scars before, and she just looks at them like that sometimes. That's where we are at. I think things are salvageable. As the way things came out before, it seemed like she sought out my mom. But I think she just got played and just attempted to give my mom some peace of mind, but unintentionally made a problem that she didn't understand. Thank you again for those who reached out and offered support before. Unnecessary to read, but for context. The example my wife gave in therapy about me not being present was this. We have a tradition in the second week of December. We go out together, get breakfast, and do our Christmas shopping. Usually at Target because she likes getting a Starbucks hot chocolate. But as we'd go through, she'd look back at me, and I was often just staring off in the distance or not really giving full answers. And I admitted I didn't remember most of what we did that day. Which she was sad, because that's one of the things about the holidays she most looks forward to is that day together. What I think about this story. I read this when it first came out, and I have to say, wife's parents really punching her up, sheltering her so much. It's no excuse for what she did, but clearly being basically punched in the face with someone she loves being the victim of extreme physical and emotional abuse, and proof of it is a lot. Every day of her life was all sunshine and rainbows until the day someone sat her down and showed her that she could have put her husband in the hospital or worse by merely talking to his mom. Her parents really screwed her up, and she likely will need therapy from the shock of everything and processing what she did. I feel so bad for OOP because now he kinda has to comfort his wife for something she did bad against him. It's not fair to him that this can of worms gets opened now. There is no way this story is over. Let's check the user comment and author answer. Does anyone else think this is kind of up? It's this exact innocent view of the world that led her to be taken advantage of. What if the mother got the idea to have OP's wife get them to meet face to face for a reunion? There's a difference between one's innocent view of the world being shattered by abuse and knowing enough about the world to not be naive and fall into traps like this. OP's stronger than I'd be in this situation. I wish him and his wife the best. I understood where they were coming from. This was a promise from when we got married, and in a way, they felt me showing her graphic abuse was against that promise. especially since abuse, rape, and other things in that nature are really quieted and not talked about much in her religion. My dad and stepmom were first responders. She had a hard time grasping the horrible things my parents would see. My line of work, I also see the worst in people, and she has a hard time grasping people can be so awful. Not to be too far, but this spread to her at home. She didn't know sleep was for anything but child making, and she can have fun, and it's okay to like something. It was a very broad statement. I knew what it applied to, but I think this could paint the picture of what they meant. I'm very grounded in reality, and she still sort of sees the world as sunshine, rainbows, and butterflies, which isn't a bad thing. She sees the good in everyone. Just, this was a moment she crossed the line and lacked good judgment. The second story from the user Wise Potato, let's listen. So for context, I, 21 female, have an older brother, 25 male, who is getting married later this year. We used to be somewhat close when we were growing up, but drifted apart after he met his now fiancée, 24 female. From the start, his girlfriend and I didn't really get along, but have always kept it civil for the sake of him and my family. So there are no bad feelings between us. Or so I thought. My grandmother called me up about 4 weeks ago to ask if I wanted to go dress shopping with her for the wedding, and I was so confused because I didn't even know my brother was engaged. I thought nothing of it and assumed they didn't mention it because I don't live with my parents anymore, but did find it somewhat strange that no one posted anything about the proposal until I found his GF's private Instagram account on my BF's phone because she blocked me. About a week ago, my mom called me and told me that the invitations were sent out that day and asked if I got mine, because my brother's GF was supposed to give them to my BF since they work at the same company. I said no, and she was very irritated. She called me back after talking to my brother and told me that she's inviting us to the wedding, and I don't need an invitation. So I said that I am not going to the wedding without an invite, and that if they didn't want me at the wedding, I don't want to be there. Now my family is saying I'm the for not accepting the invitation, my mother inviting me over the phone, and saying that I want to ruin her wedding day. So, ATA? Author update this story. Thank you for everyone's comments. I only posted the story today, but I already have the update because it just happened a few hours ago. My parents and my brother showed up at my house. Luckily, my BF was home too. Oh, and I'm so not going to the wedding. This is what happened. My brother's fiancée does indeed not want me at the wedding. My parents and brother are trying to convince her to invite me. No thanks. Not after everything. They came to our house to tell me I should apologize to my brother's girlfriend. I was totally fine with it. I only wanted to know what it was I was apologizing for, which is where I might be the AH. They told me that they couldn't tell me what it was, but that it happened 2 years ago when F. and I used to work together at the same company. I tried to find out what it was, but they wouldn't tell me. My boyfriend got a bit upset about everything and told them that if they can't even tell me what I did wrong, he sees no reason for me to apologize. My brother then let us know that he doesn't care if we don't attend, but my grandparents told him if he doesn't invite me, they're also not going, and that's the only reason they want me there. So I decided that I'm not going to the wedding. Me and my boyfriend are going on a trip for the weekend. Not to be petty or anything, we're just going to enjoy ourselves. I really appreciate everyone's positive comments. So my grandparents actually called me the following morning asking if I got invited to the wedding. I said no, and they were so mad. Turns out my grandparents were paying for the wedding. My brother told everyone he was paying for everything himself, but nope. My grandparents are now not paying for the wedding after FSL also refused to tell them what she is upset about. My parents have stepped up to cover the rest of the wedding expenses, and my grandparents, my BF and I, will be enjoying a great weekend. Thank you to everyone's comments and advice, I really appreciate it. That's all the updates I have, but I will keep you posted. What I think about this story. It's interesting to me, the family dynamic here, and how short-sighted most of them seem to be. Grandparents were willing to pay for their grandson's wedding. Now, I wouldn't normally assume that they would pay for their granddaughters as well because sometimes people favor boys, but the grandparents in this scenario have made it clear they value their granddaughter as much as their grandson. So there is a distinct possibility they'll offer to help OP with her wedding one day. It's really not in anyone's interest to play FSL's games, because grandparents have also made it clear that they will withdraw money from the table when divisive drama llama games are in play. If I were the parents, I'd take that as a sign that grandparents don't play, and they should be aware of how their behavior might impact grandparents' willingness to contribute financially, just as a general rule. Same for the brother. OP should just keep taking the high road, because her grandparents clearly at least recognize that she's been doing exactly that. She's done what she can to reduce the discord, and when she realized there was nothing more in her power to do, she backed off and let it go. Anyone who doesn't see OP's behavior as being the bigger person is never going to, because they're also an immature drama llama. She can just let those people keep on walking away from her. It will save her a lot of trouble in the future if those people stay at a distance. Thanks to everyone who was here today. See you tomorrow. Don't forget to leave comments. I love everyone. Bye-bye.